Hey everyone. I read a bunch of good comic books this week, and I wanted to share some of my thoughts on them with you. Maybe I'll start with the least good one. It was still fun enough to read. It was The Fox from Red Circle Comics, which is part of Archie Comics. The Fox apparently is a character that has been around since 1940, revived every now and then. Maybe kind of a cross between Spider-Man and Daredevil. Doesn't really have any powers. Just wears a fox outfit and is a journalist as his day job, and somehow uses being the fox as a way to get more stories. It's not never clear in this issue how that works. He seems to be getting a story, and then the story goes crazy on him, as you can see with this woman. And then he slips on his fox outfit. And he spends a lot of, I don't know. So it's by this artist, Dean Haspel, who has done a lot of indie alternative work. He worked with Harvey Pekar, and he worked with what's that guy's name? He did a graphic novel. He drew the graphic novel The Alcoholic, which was by a well-known literary writer whose name I now can't remember. And he's done other things like that. And now he wants to get more into superheroes by working with Archie Comics on their character the Fox. And he brought in Mark Waid to script over his story. So he plots and draws the story and then Mark Waid comes in afterwards and puts in the dialogue. And that wasn't enough. It's kind of too bad Mark Waid wasn't there to co-plot, because that's maybe what's really needed here. The plot just kind of, it's childish, but not in a satisfying childish way, and too many of the issues in the story, like like that he's attracted to this woman who turns out to be the bad guy, who he shouldn't be attracted to because he's married with a wife. All that kind of stuff that's put in here doesn't really jibe with a children's comic, I don't think. But it does have kind of the logic of children's comics. People just sort of appear, things just sort of happen. It still might develop into something fun. There's a bit of Steve Ditko here that, if it were teased out more, could be better. So I might pick up the next issue of The Fox. It was okay, but it could have been a lot better. So I think that's the only comic I read this week that I went, I could have lived without it. And yet, I'm still thinking of getting it. I'm trying it for one more issue. Maybe because of the Mark Waid involvement, and that I do kind of crave that return to simpler times sometimes. So let's see. Speaking of return to simpler times, I read with my daughter. I didn't bother reading The Fox with my daughter. I thought I might, but it seemed too many things in it that she just wouldn't get or be interested in, along with its childish, plot mechanics. But we did read together Archie number 649. Kind of nice to see a comic book with numbers that high, which has this. This is, I guess, the variant edition, but variant editions don't cost anymore with Archie. It has this wonderful wraparound reference, take on the famous diner painting by Edward Hopper. Is Edward Hopper famous, I wonder, to our British friends or elsewhere, or is he just famous in the U.S.? But a pretty iconic painter in the U.S. And it's just fun for me anyway. It seems really fun to see Archie and Jughead in there. And the story inside is kind of just a little bit of a take on Harry Potter, in which the high school that they all go to. What's the name of that high school? Riverdale High becomes a school for wizards and witches, and all of this is Jug. It's a Jughead story, and it's Jughead spinning his story for his sister as a bedtime story, making up his adventures of trying to avoid the gala dance because he doesn't like girls making him go to dances. And it's kind of cute and fun, and I enjoyed it. My daughter enjoyed it. I enjoyed it because I was reading it to my daughter. It was good, solid, imaginative kids stuff. My daughter still says she prefers Betty and Veronica. She wants her girl heroes. And we've been finding some other Betty and Veronica stuff on the Archie app. That's been good. More fairy tale Betty and Veronica stories. Speaking of fairy tales, I really enjoyed the latest Richard Corbin, Edgar Allan Poe stuff. I like the way he handled The Raven, which is just a poem, and he turned it into a kind of dream-like prose poem, you might say, about someone who perhaps hasn't accepted the death of his wife. And it's very evocative, and I really, really like Corbin's work. His artwork just seems better than ever to me. He's just doing what he's always done, but just doing it even better. The Mask of the Red Death is one of my favorite Edgar Allan Poe stories, and maybe I expected too much because of that. So I enjoyed it, but I wished there were more layers to it somehow. There's some great images, and Prospero the King is truly awful and just an awful person. But I thought there could be ways to add various layers to it. I used to imagine that I could write a novel that took place at the Mask of the Red Death, involving other characters than Prospero and what was going on with them at the time. But anyway, still beautiful to look at. You gotta, when you take your Edgar Allan Poe by Richard Corbin, you gotta realize it's gonna be as much Richard Corbin as it is Edgar Allan Poe. I mean, it's all kind of framed with this bizarre, balding, one-eyed hag with giant pendulous breasts. And so it all is, you're inside the head of Richard Corbin when you read these. With somehow some of the architecture built on top of Edgar Allan Poe. Should I save my best for last? It doesn't really matter. Another one that I liked quite a bit was Saga, no surprise. I think this issue had a lot of Alana and, now I can't remember his name, Alana and our male hero. And they are still, to me, the least interesting characters. This relative of Prince Robot is quite interesting, this very merciless soldier. It's also interesting that most of the time her computer or TV head face has no images on it. It's just a blank gray. Once or twice, some stuff shows up on her. I'm going to have to go back. I still want to go back and look at all the robot head faces and try to put together what's going on there. So yeah, I just don't... Oh, that's not Alana and her man. I just don't get as into the Alana and whatever his name is scenes. They're a little too cute, and I don't know. So there's all this stuff. What am I saying? I enjoyed it. I'm not as wowed by Saga right now as I used to be. Maybe I'm just taking it for granted. It's always a great pleasure, though, when it comes out. So that was a fun read. I read Five Ghosts number 6, which is a standalone adventure after the first 5 issues, which originally were going to just be a miniseries, but it became so popular they decided to continue it. And I have the first 5 issues in the trade, but I haven't read them yet, and I decided to go ahead and read this and see how well it stood up. And since I knew the basic setup of that he's this kind of adventurer, relic hunter / thief type of character who has the powers of 5 different literary characters, which I guess were shown on the back inside cover. I knew the basics, and I was able to enjoy it quite a bit. Really good art, good coloring. 33 pages, I believe, of actual story on really nice paper. It's $3.50. I would like it $2.99, but it's a really good deal. It's a really nice package. Back cover art, inside back cover, just a few ads at the back, but the full 33 pages of story. So I definitely want to continue on the 5 Ghosts train, and I'm eager to go back and read that trade and see what I've missed so far. It's good pulp fun, It's like what you imagine you would read in a great pulp magazine, but with great art to go along with it. It does kind of have the theme of women you love, for men, women you love betraying you. And I didn't quite buy into the forgiveness that came at the end. But other than that, I really enjoyed it a lot. It has a lot of silent action scenes with no words, like this page. And they're pretty well done. Sometimes you have to look twice to make sure you've understood everything that happened. There was I don't want to show the one of the final action scenes, I guess. But there was a moment where I didn't parse it, and I had to go back and look at it about 3 times before I got exactly what had happened and saw that they hadn't cheated, that it all made sense, and that it was a nice reference back to what happened earlier in the book. And in terms of the betrayal, it's nice that our opening scene between our hero and our heroine for this issue was kind of a scene of betrayal, although supposedly training. So I liked the theme of betrayal here, even though the idea that if it's always women betraying men, then that's kind of an old sexist trope from the pulp days. But anyhow, enjoyable book. Very good. Another good one was this Baltimore #1 for $1. This is the first issue of the very first miniseries of Baltimore, because it's been a long series of miniseries. I guess they're on their 17th miniseries now, and this is from the first miniseries. It was good. You could see all the elements already in place in this first issue that I've been experiencing in Baltimore Infernal Train, the 3rd issue of which comes out next week, the final issue of that. And I like Steinbeck's art, Ben Steinbeck's art, and you can see that he's gotten even better. It's very good in this issue, but he's gotten even better in the more recent stuff that he's been doing in Infernal Train, and no doubt has been getting better all along through the 17 stories in this series. The weird thing is, it does say here, Volume 3 of the hardcover on sale November 20th. It doesn't mention that this coming week, issue 3 of another Baltimore series is coming out. It also doesn't mention where to get this story, which is continued. In fact, it ends, the last page, to be continued. But there's no reference in here. I don't think they're going to reprint the rest of this series in comic book form, so where do we go get it? They don't say, pick up the rest of the story in Volume 1 of Baltimore. Maybe that's obvious, but they should do that. They should let you know where to get the rest of the story. I think I'm going to just search out the rest of the back issues to continue this story, because I don't I'm enjoying this one in floppies, so I'll just keep looking for the rest of it. And but it continues my feeling that I really like Baltimore, and so looking forward to future issues of that. Another really good kids one that me and my daughter read was Powerpuff Girls issue number 2. I'm too old to have be nostalgic for Powerpuff Girls. They came after my time. But my daughter and I really like the artwork in here and the coloring. And the story's a lot of fun. There were weird stuff in it that was really weird to us, like this strange devil-looking character, and where is he, and what is his power over everything, or she, kind of in a tutu or something. Is he, she, well, it has a beard, so it's probably a he. Is he really the devil? And then he kind of takes control of a bunch of, I guess, a bunch of other Powerpuff villains who are not identified to us. So it was a bit reliant on the idea that you already knew a lot about the Powerpuffs world, but still really good, and we were able to figure it out. The one real complaint is it's to be continued, and I know that I don't have to, not like Baltimore, I know where to go get the next issue, but a month is a long time to wait for a little girl to get the rest of the plot. So it would be really nice if things like Powerpuffs were one and dones. It's not like we're less likely to buy the next issue because it's not to be continued. If my daughter likes it, we go buy another one. Perhaps it's kind of a writing for the trade that most kids' books sell more in trades than in single issues. Another one my daughter and I read was Looney Tunes. She enjoyed this, and I enjoyed it fairly well, but it was full of kind of jokes that went over her head and were a little boring to her, because a lot of it involved Daffy Duck being a traveling salesman, and lots of jokes about how to successful techniques for selling. Daffy's successful techniques are, of course, ridiculous and not so successful. But none of that really makes sense to my daughter. The idea of door-to-door salesman is pretty long gone. Probably appear, was a common thing when they first did the Looney Tunes, of course. A really fun one was where Daffy Duck is trying to sell insurance to the coyote. But, of course, it took me a lot of work to explain insurance and an insurance salesman to a 5-year-old girl also. So just a little bit of an odd choice there, or an unfortunate choice. But otherwise, these are pretty good comics for kids. And then not for kids, I think my favorite of the week was Swamp Thing Annual. I've been really liking, as most people have, the Charles Soule run here on the Swamp Thing. And he really upped his game even further, I felt, in this issue, and just gave us a really cool view of the Green as kind of a place of politics and power struggles, and gave us a whole, without changing anything, gave us a new view on Swamp Thing's position in the world, and the nature of the Green and its long history and what it's all about. And on top of that, it was stunningly good art. There were two artists. The main artist was Javier Pina, and then there was a short section that was done by Kano, an artist that I've always liked in the past. But Javier Pina was just so excellent. I don't know if I've ever seen this artist before, and the coloring was really excellent too. I mean, really handled the whole issues of greenness in different ways and just made it, wonderfully easy to read and beautiful to look at. This was an excellent colorist. DC still doesn't credit colorists on the cover. I really think they should do that. Let's see. The colorist was Matthew Wilson. So that's a name I'll have to watch for. Because it's not easy to do a comic that's mostly in shades of green and make it look, really fabulous. So Matthew Wilson is really a crucial part of this art team on this book. And so I was a little less excited about this idea of Swamp Thing battling the Cedar to see who will become the champion of the green, but now that, or the avatar of the green, but now that I've read this issue, I'm really excited to keep reading. So Charles Soule really is not letting us down here. So that's the new comics I read this week. And I guess I'll be hunting down more Baltimore when I can, and running back to that trade of the Five Ghosts saga. There are moments where I wonder, should I go? I used to think I have to read this in single issues, that I couldn't wait. But as it slows down, I'm starting to think maybe whenever this arc ends, I'll switch to trades. I'm thinking about it anyway. So, and I think it's funny that I'm reading a lot of Archie, because, as I said, we're getting a lot on the iPad too. And it feels like maybe some other people are starting to pick up Archie too. I saw Comic Book Mom doing that. So I don't know if Archie is managing to make us more aware of Archie due to some of their more interesting books lately. And if that will have the effect of me buying Archie more often, or some kind of Archie comics more often. Anyway, hope you're all well, and I'll be watching your videos very soon. Bye-bye.